Hello, I am RXC. In this one, you're actually going to be hearing a whole bunch of editor RXC for this because, well, it's hard to do voiceover whenever you're painting stuff and singing the whole time like a babbling idiot. So, in this case, I'm going to be showing off some of the stuff that I had been painting over November, which I had aptly named Paintvember because during the month of October I was working and then on vacation for a little while, so I couldn't really get to these guys like I had been planning to. However, I did make up for it on painting every day in November, which I have a recording for every morning, evening, or whenever I had done it. In this case, it was the first batch, which are my Space Marines, because I had wanted to get back into them. Some of these guys I had already painted a little bit of, and one of the things, sadly, you'll notice here is because these were my first time painting with actually recording stuff, I had forgotten to. I forgot to set it up properly, so a whole bunch of it is going to be a little bit blurry or a little bit mangled on it. Also, one of the things I noticed after recording these, I didn't realize how hairy my arms were. I know this is like a complete off topic thing, but I just, it astonishes me because they're actually quite light, but on the recording they look much darker than they actually are. So in this, I'm just painting them regular Space Marine colors for the most part. I do actually have a few differences than the regular Ultramarines that I paint, mainly because I like giving them a little bit more detail into it, which we'll see a lot more on those Terminators whenever we get to those, which I thought that they weren't going to end up as well as they did, but they turned out pretty nice looking in my opinion, even though there's a lot of it that uh, I kind of feel like I need new paints for it, definitely. Um, like these ones might be a little bit older or a little bit mangled, maybe. This guy, we're just painting all of his regular blues. Macragge blue, probably one of my favorite colors of all time. Big fan of blue. I don't know if you can tell the shirt that I'm wearing in this is the same, roughly the same color uh, that we'll be seeing. And some of these are just in batches of 2 hours to like 6 hours, I think it is. The 2 hour ones were done in the morning, and the later ones were done on my off days because I work out every other day. Because it is nice to keep in shape, and it helps you feel real good about yourself sometimes. Um, Here I'm just applying the second coats as well as getting a little bit further up on the guy, applying more solid colors. I have to be. I'm not a neat person when it comes to this. I wind up really painting over a whole bunch of the stuff I had already done, and you'll see me go over it many, many, many times, which is kind of my own fault. I know a lot of the larger minis I have a much easier time going through just because it's not as delicate, which is probably the bad thing and something I'll get better at eventually. Um, Before I had painted these guys at the start of Paintvember, I had last painted probably a year and a half or whatever before this. Uh, I had been painting probably since 2018. I have a group of Tau that I have painted because I thought they were really cool. I love mech suits. I love that style. I didn't realize how points worked or anything. I was just doing it because I liked what the models looked like, and I was going to use them for a Starfinder campaign, but we never wound up doing that. So there was no space cops, which is what I was going to basically use them for. Kind of like close to what the XCOM police were like, the Advent, but not exactly. Like they did actually do police work, but they weren't necessarily the evil alien group, you know? But it would have really depended on what the players decided to play as. If they went smugglers, we would have seen those minis a whole bunch, but in this case we didn't see. I mean, the Space Marines would have also been some pretty cool guys to show up on there, either being, very large war marine men in the Galactic War, rebels, if you wish them to be known as. But I don't know. There's a lot of different ideas, and I do use these minis. I every now and again with my little brother will play a match or two of Space Marine Fight Time, or Warhammer 40k, whichever one you really care to know it as. Um, but other than that, I primarily just have them. I don't really use them for too much else. I think it would be cool to actually run something, either roleplay wise or otherwise, little war games and stuff like that with them. You can either do regular Games Workshop stuff or whatever else you wish to do. I do not judge on that front. Miniatures are miniatures, you know. Just continually. Ugh, it's like slowly. It's so savage. Watching these back, it fills me with dread. I'm gonna be honest, because there was so much on these first 2 days that I didn't realize how that was gonna look on camera. And sometimes it comes through, and you're like, "Oh, that's not bad looking," but obviously, I don't have my monitor behind where I'm painting at, so I can't see how it looks, which is kind of rough. You can also see on my hands, sadly, I am a finger chewer or a cuticle chomper, whatever you wish to know it as, which is primarily bad if you're going to show off your hands for something. So I have actually been trying to get out of that habit because it's not a good habit to be into, and it kind of messes up your hands. But I actually made pretty good progress over this because I'm like, no, I can't chew on my fingers because I'm going to be painting stuff. That would be ridiculous. Can't be doing that. So I'm sorry if my fingers look crazy. I know whenever it comes to hobby crafts and stuff, a lot of people wind up either chopping their fingers or their nails or anything with the X-Acto blades and stuff like that. Because, I mean, when it comes to the craft, that's kind of what you're worried about. Like, oh man, I chopped my nail. It's sad. Or I wound up doing this with my fingers. Now it's sad. But no, it's a lot of it is pretty difficult work. Sadly, I'm not like professional painter man. So, I mean, in all honesty, for basically what I consider amateur work, they're not the worst things. And some people go through the 3-foot rule of, oh, if it looks good at 3 feet, you know, why would you bring it closer? I'm like a good 20-foot rule. You know that guy's blue, but that's it. That's the best part about it. He's that far away. But all around, they did come out pretty well, and we'll see a lot of that in the coming episodes slowly over time. I have to figure out what else I'm going to do with this because I am just watching over it as I'm doing the voiceover, hoping that I don't mess up on a major form or anything like that. I do plan on adding music, so I don't know if that's playing at the same time. Probably is. I look forward to editing this on top of that and being able to add more text on these black sidebars because I didn't properly record it. And then also another thing, in the top right you can see I have 2 other things painted there along with the Space Marine and stuff, which actually are related to the Deep Rock Galactic board game because I thought those were cool. Mainly because I don't really have a whole lot of like terrain or alien stuff. So having those and being able to put something like that on the table, if it is related to Starfinder or D&D or any other sort of like game you're doing at the time, it is a pretty cool thing to do with that. Oh, here I'm going to try and show off what they look like, even though it's going to be awful. There it is. He's blue. Look at him. But you can see a few of the things here that I try to make a little bit different than the normal ultramarine guys, is the extra gold and the extra bronze that go into it. And you'll see a whole bunch of this on these Terminators whenever I actually get them fully painted. Is I wanted to put a lot more detail into those, making them seem like there was more to this chapter. And it something I want to do further down the line, and I need to make like a full little list thing on what the chapter symbol looks like, because I haven't decided on what that needs to be. Is the like the colors, what the commanders are named, and stuff like that, or the lieutenants, what they look like. I want, as it goes higher in command, I want it to be more bronze, and I don't want to step on like the other chapters, even though I don't really care. Like at the end of the day, it's my Space Marines, and you'll just basically select a list of the codex things that are related to those guys, and you don't overstep your boundaries, and that's just kind of it. But like, I don't want them to be Blood Angel. Like, I want them to be similar to Ultramarines, but maybe a little bit closer range, if that makes any sense. Because I know Ultramarines are very like logistics. That's basically what they're good at, and everyone does stuff differently. And I got these guys out of the Leviathan box, and that's why they're so close range. But I think for any Space Marines in the future that I pick up, I kind of want them to be that mid to close range, maybe. Because anything further is like, it's just not as fun, It's like, I rolled 30 dice, and he's that far away. But it's like, I charge these guys, and now we're going to get into some shit. But yeah, it's very, very dependent on what I'm looking for at that time. Me trying to be neat here and painting in between those bars, and just, it's going to be hilarious later down the line when I'm overwriting everything I've done up to this point. Because that's just the way it'll wind up being. It is like very intriguing, because I watch my sibling Cleaver's stuff on painting, and I see a lot of the finished product, but like Cleaver had said to me, it is weird seeing you paint, because the Cleaver only sees the batches. It's like, this guy's almost painted, this guy's finished, this guy's this. So you don't see the whole process, and it's definitely one of those like intriguing to watch for some people, for sure. I don't know how I feel about it. Maybe it's because I'm doing it is the reason I don't know how I feel about it. But it's really, like, another thing to say is it's really hard to say that I'm super proud of them, because it's something I did. I don't like to feel like, oh, well, it's good because I did it, which is by no means anybody should think that way, especially not when it's like little miniature men. You're like, man, look, I'm the greatest. And it's like, you made a little plastic man and you painted the plastic man. Good job, thumbs up. I think they're definitely cool, but like hobby wise, for sure. But yeah, I completely off topic, completely off tracked myself. I don't know what the hell I was talking about. I've completely forgotten what I was going for. But no, it is cool. It is interesting seeing it, for sure. Especially watching back. And remembering what I was listening to at that time is crazy to think about, because I had been listening to who was it at the time? Tom Cardy's Lo-Fi had come out, and I was listening to that on repeat this whole, I think basically first 2 days. That's what I had been doing, because I don't know, I was just chilling to it. And then eventually over time I listened to a whole bunch of other things, which I'm trying to recall now. I think it was a mixture of Tom Cardy songs to 21 Pilots to Cosmo Sheldrake, just various. And then it was more hardcore during whenever I was painting the second and third batch because it was, I don't know, it was just more metal stuff. I don't want to reveal what the second and third batch are yet because those ones are surprises. First batch, though, what we're paying attention to right now is just Space Marines, which they're hanging out. The Terminators, Box Boys. I did not know what I was going to do with these guys at first, and I was like, do I want to put the back on the Power Fist? Do I want to make that bronze? Do I want to... this whole time I was really trying to think hard about what I wanted to do in this moment. What I really needed to do was give myself a little holder so that way I wasn't sweating all over my miniatures, because my hands during this, I was so nervous. I was so nervous to mess up. Normally, they're just sweaty because, you know, that's just the way it is. But these ones, I feel like they were extra sweaty because I had been recording. And I was like, well, you don't want to mess up. If you did mess up, it's, you know, you're going to be sad. You got to cut out all that part of the video. You don't have any footage after that point. This one is going to be a super long piece of footage here because I was painting all new stuff. It was all the gray bits that was on this Terminator. So I wanted them to be a little bit more showy. It's something new that is getting painted, which is in its entirety this guy. So that's the reason why this one is just 2 times the whole way through. It's a long cut because, well, I don't know. During editing, I watched a lot of what was there, and anytime I had felt bored, I had gone through and just chopped out however, 10, 20 minutes, whatever, and cut that out because it was boring to me. So then I rewatched it and I went through and I did it again until I had a whole bunch of these little chopped edit pieces, and kind of finished it up and went from there. But now you can see definitely the blue as it sticks on and tacks on is kind of wild because it was gray just a second ago. It was all gray and now it's all blue, which is wild. And I am like mega amateurish when it comes to this because sometimes my paint is too thin, sometimes it's not thinned enough, and the whole time I'm just having problems. I felt the whole time I felt the whole time that I had just been like completely messing up. So looking at it now, it's not that big of a deal because the final product is not complete garbage, which is very good. And without this commentary, you probably never would have known that I had no idea what I was doing on it. Like, so far, it seems like, oh, I'm going to paint all this blue, and that's going to be that, and I'll go over through and fix everything that I messed up, and go from there. Probably the thing that turned some of those hardcore Space Boys away was painting the face blue, which I know that they're painted differently, like vastly. They have white heads, or they do this and all that stuff, but obviously these all Space Marines in this are going to be related to my chapter, so they're going to be painted differently in one way or another, and it's going to wind up being more blue, bronze, gold with black accents and iron accents on the weapons and stuff like that, and not so much like, oh, it has to be white and stuff like that. Mainly, the reason being, white paint does not like me. It doesn't like me at all. It's never liked me. I don't think my siblings have had any luck with white paint. It sucks. I don't know what the hell the problem is. You'll see it later in batch 2 when I start painting with white. What happens? It's bad. That one, I will assuredly say, it's bad. But for these guys, I just like the flat colors and then throwing some accents and stuff on them, which I do wind up doing a little bit of that with the highlights and stuff like that, which some of those are things that I had never tried doing, and I wanted to try and figure out what the best way to do it was. Like gradients. You'll see a lot of that in batch 3, actually, that I had never tried. Well, I did try. I tried it once on a Saurian flag bearer, which it went from a purple to blue, I think it was. And that was probably the nicest thing I had done related to gradient. And I tried it a few other times afterwards, and it just did not work properly. But I had found this person, and whenever I get to that point, I'll talk about them to give you an idea as to what I was following at that time, who I was, kind of basing that model off of, because they're a large model. But in this case, these ones I just kind of balls to the wall to see what I could do. We're getting close to the end of the first day, where I still have a box. Somehow this focused. I don't know what happened where it focused here. There was so many other times that I had cut out where it just didn't. It didn't focus whatsoever. There's like a few little pieces in here of stuff that I actually needed to paint, especially for the stuff. You can see that time spent recording day 1 was 1 hour and 16 minutes. I cut that down to 20 minutes. So there was a good little bit of time, a little wave there from a painted hand, because, of course, beginning of day 2, unpainted hand. Oh my goodness. You see my Fitbit too tight on my arm there because I just pull it as tight. I think I need to get a new little wristband thing for it, because it is about that time. Finally remembered how I painted these guys. I put a decal on those other guys' shoulders because I didn't know what the hell I was doing, and I feel like an idiot for putting them on there without knowing what the hell I was doing for the decals. But that's okay. Sometimes that's just the way it is. And they're just going to have a little flame on their shoulder. But yeah, I still haven't figured out what I want to do for the symbol. I don't know if I want it to be like a brazier with a flame on it or what. But I don't want to be too salamander. I don't want to be too, this or that. So it's definitely going to have to be something I feel is worth it for my Space Marines, my little army of guys. So I have to probably sit down and really look into it and figure it out. Here I'm just going over a lot of these first few minutes or hours or whatever are going to be me cleaning up what I had done the previous day, because I, as I said previous, am a very messy painter. So it was the easiest thing for me to do was just to let my eyes rest, because I have pretty bad eyesight, all things considered, especially when this was going on, because I think it was pretty allergy ridden coming back from vacation, and my eyes hurt real bad. And I don't think it was until later I actually took my goggles. They're not goggles. They're like it's a little strap goes around my forehead, and it has a light, and I can put little magnifying lenses on it. My spectacles, whatever you want to call them, my hobby glasses, I would put them on to actually see properly, because, man, it's rough. It's pretty rough. Here we're painting the black exosuit pieces in between the joints and everything like that. We'll see me probably mess up a few times here on that. I'm trying to be as gentle as I can and as efficient as I can. Still didn't fix the box on day 2, obviously. Why would I have done that? Didn't even realize till day 3. But I mean, the best part is it gives me this beautiful side area that if I need to put a comment on how editor RXC was feeling at that moment, I could easily have done so. But it just shows you how unprepared I was for painting minis. But sometimes it's better to have created than to never try it at all. So I think this was a pretty good learning experience, definitely. It's the same as whenever my voice messes up on recordings of Space Marine or Voice of the Void or anything like that. I wind up getting pretty angry at, just because I should know better that stuff like that will and can and does happen. So going through painting the little armor pieces just above the feet. I don't know what it is. It reminds me of mud skirts, and so I immediately put them on my Space Marines. I was like, well, this has to be painted this color because it's a little mud skirt for the shoe. So, and it gives, I don't know, it gives it some depth in one way or another. It gives it a little change of pace. I'm painting are those the intakes or I can't recall on the backpacks. But just painting them something different so it actually shows up different when you look at the whole thing in its entirety. Because I think it's adding more uniqueness to the Space Marines, giving them more, and like when they're all together, them being uniform, it looks nice. Because by the end of the day, that's what it needed to be. An army's gonna look like the army, and that's that. So, in the case of these guys, they're still figuring it out. I'm still getting there. Obviously, I don't have any. Well, I have my captain. I have a captain and a librarian, and I have to paint them and kind of figure out what I want to do with that. I don't want to be exact librarian, but I don't know exactly what the librarians are supposed to look like. Like if it's allowed to be red in a Blood Angels, or if it's always supposed to be blue with like a different shoulder pad, or if that's the chaplains I'm thinking of. I guess I'll just have to look more into that. Probably after the voiceover, I'll look into it after a little bit and figure out what I want it to look like. I've definitely took some inspiration, or I'm thinking about taking some inspiration from the painting that Duncan Rhodes, what's his name? I think it's Duncan Rhodes did for the librarian. He owns Two Thin Coats. I don't know what happened with my brain there, but he did a lot of painting stuff for Warhammer, I recall, and I followed a lot of those tutorials, and I basically don't watch anybody else paint for the most part because I want them to look a particular way. Which, it's just one of those things. I think everybody paints a different way, and sometimes you'll gain those people that, in this case, I paint very roughly. I paint very unstably, and it's fun to watch someone struggle bust through it because of their own mistakes. They refused to, take the time and the elegance in painting something like this. Just painting the flamer here on it because flamethrowers are cool. We got to use those in Space Marine too a little bit. They were a little bit wild. Yeah, definitely. I definitely need to get better at highlights, though. You'll probably see it in the later episodes of this. I think batch 1 took me about a week or so, and then batch 2 took me a while. I think it was probably about two and a few weeks, which was pretty rough. I didn't realize just how long it was going to take, but I mean, these guys, I basically painted 3 or 4 models to the point of completion, and 2 of those guys were already based with blue. The other ones were 10 that I had yet to do anything with, so they were full gray boys, which was rough. I don't think I'll be doing anything like that in the future. It'll probably be a limited up to 5, because 10, especially with the problems I had with some of the other paints was rough, for sure. But in this case, these guys, not bad. I mean, I already had all the paints. I definitely need to get some re-ups on a few of these. I think Macragge Blue I need a re-up on for ease of access. Or, you know, maybe I'll branch out and get some Tooth and Coats or Army Painter or whatever and try them out. Because I think at the end of the day, whatever works best for you is what you should use. Here, I actually brought the miniature up to the camera to show what I was doing, and then I didn't realize that it wouldn't focus. So a lot of what happens later down the line is going to be me turning off autofocus and having everything be blurry when it's not up to the camera, which is all right. I mean, at the end of the day, you're going to have to take certain things, certain precautions, whatever. All in all, I didn't expect this webcam to actually pick up on some of these details, which I was pretty happy about. I thought it was going to be rough looking, but it did actually pick out a whole bunch of the details on these Space Boys, which was very good because you can actually see when I fuck up the most. But in this case, it was all right. Definitely see I've either not, and like I don't know what my habit is here where I'm getting water and adding it to the paint every single time, or if I'm wetting my brush. I don't know what the deal is. It worked out well in batch 3, but maybe it's because I finally realized how I'm supposed to thin paints, because again, I hadn't painted for a year and a half or so, and I've just completely forgotten basically everything that I had learned up to that point. Not that I was good, but at the same time, like, should have retained something from this, but it is what it is. All the little tabs out here are for me taking breaks for my eyes, probably, or looking at the material to figure out how the hell a Terminator is supposed to look, and then figuring out that I didn't actually care what their Terminators looked like. I wanted it to be my Terminator because they're my models. I bought these little bastards, so I might as well figure out what I want them to look like through my perspective. Because if I have them on my shelf, I want them to be my work, right? And maybe this is just me being narcissistic or so, but I think it's important for you to like what you have, especially when it comes to a hobby that is related to your own stuff. I don't know what the hell I was doing here. Obviously, I have the mud skirts for the Flame Squad. I don't know what I was doing for this like steel-toed Terminator with painting it black, but it was okay. I think I'm gonna wind up doing that for all the future ones for sure. Going through painting all the wires and stuff black. This is one thing I haven't figured out how to do, is that little hazard stripe thing, and I'm sure it's the easiest thing in the world to do. And when I figure it out, I'll add that onto my Terminator Captain. But I will have to look into that. I will have to like grab a small like plastic tube and then paint it to look like that, so I have an idea as to what the hell I'm doing. And then probably when I start painting it, it won't be that big of a deal. Maybe you just base coat it black and then put the yellow on afterwards in that way, but yeah, I have to figure that out. There's a lot of stuff that I have to figure out for sure. Here's another long cut of me painting this guy because it's basically stuff we hadn't seen yet. I was trying to figure out how I wanted the Gatling gun to look, and I wound up taking a lot of inspiration from what they had just on the Terminator Squad stuff. So it's gonna look close to that basically. I don't know. I was trying to make up words there in my head. I was going to say referentially like that, which might work. I don't know for words, but I wound up just messing myself up for sure. Now I'm getting interested because I'm watching it instead of commenting on how I'm painting it, because it's turning something gray into a newly colored piece. I guess this is why people that make gunpla and stuff like that feel, because it's the same thing. You get a little model, you paint it. I get, depending on what your view is, this one is more or less weebish as that. So may or may not be about the same thing. I had to watch my other screen there to see what they look like on that front, so that way I could paint it properly. This guy I had hell with because it obviously the gun had a few different colors attached to it, so I had to make sure that it had that diversity to the weapon itself. A lot of them are just going to be the same black, silverish iron color and move on with my life. But this one, it was so much more detail that went into it because of the fact that it was a minigun, like to show that this thing had to rotate and do stuff like that. Speaking of rotating, I saw somebody, I don't recall where it was, had motorized the minigun and put a little light on the end of it so that way it showed that it would like shoot. That is badass. When it comes to hobby stuff, that is an absolute wild undertaking to add a whole bunch of wire, mechanical, electronic pieces to your miniatures to give them that semblance of like realism. That is insane. It goes right up there with like drilling out holes in the gun barrels so that way you get the feeling like it's real. I didn't do that in this case because I don't have a tool that could do that, or at least like a more controlled version of a tool that could do that. Also, I am a very impatient person, and it shows because I have put all of these pieces together and glued them together, except for batch 3. That's the only one I didn't do. So basically everything that's hard to reach is just going to remain hard to reach. And especially with someone like me who, again, I paint horribly messy. It was really rough on some of those pieces where it's like I have to paint underneath it, but I can't reach underneath it because it has all these other things around it, and it's my own fault. It's my own fault I did that to myself. In this case, Space Marines, easy as hell. Their arms outstretch from their bodies because they're so dang big, and so it was just real easy to go in and paint it because it gives you a wide enough berth for you to put a brush underneath the pit and paint or whatever. And at times where I couldn't, I have brushes that can go around the corners that need be. I can quote unquote curve the brushes or bullets, whatever you wish. Painting little toesies on these guys again, on the other Marine that was there. A whole bunch of these, so I have them just on base. I haven't done any basing or anything yet. I'm going to wait to do all the basing for this entire collection until once they're all painted. So that way I have a clear scheme as to these two armies, how I want them to look, what I want them to feel like when you put them on a table. Which is pretty rough to look at for sure. I understand why people are like, oh, first thing you need to do, base the plate, but I think it can add a lot more diversity and intrigue into it whenever you leave it and then paint it, and then now you have a better understanding for what you want them to be as a group. I've cleaned my brush the last time. You can see I think I'm popping my fingies on the little glass piece there. I'd been recording for 2 hours 24 minutes, and that's the end of the recording there. It's now just a black screen, I think. Thank you for watching, listening, going about your daily life. I hope this was enjoyable for you. I don't know what the hell I'm doing, so This was a first time for everything moment. I guess I'll see you in whatever is made next, or the next Paintvember video. Bye-bye.